So, most of the manufacturing I've done has been very high volume stuff, hundreds of thousands of units, millions of units. And we've done all our manufacturing in China and Taiwan. Um, that being said, I don't think that's the right answer for most young companies. I think that if you manufacture in China, you get access to scale, to these high volume manufacturers who have deep expertise in making millions of units a year. But you don't need that in year one. And manufacturing in China takes you to a place where you have to fly to China all the time. You have to deal with a manufacturer and an assembly line that is far away from you. And when something goes wrong, instead of driving to Fremont, you have to get on a plane and go to China. So it's my general advice that as you begin your production, the right thing to do is try to do it as close to home as possible. You're going to pay more for it, most likely, but you're going to be able to get to market faster because of it. And if your product costs 10% more, but you're able to get to market 2 months faster or a year faster, that feels like, to me, like the right trade-off to make. And then as you get to scale, that's when it's time to figure out whether it makes sense to move to Mexico, to move to China, to move to wherever. One fast answer.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Being the guy who's done crowd campaigns and had to fulfill much smaller quantities, I, from the beginning, just started doing everything in China, and it was a very, very tricky route with a lot of pitfalls. So I think doing that kind of approach where you kind of have a hybrid model or a transitional model makes a lot of sense, for sure.
Kind of like what Robert said, having built products in China a couple times already, I'd recommend trying to do it here just for the ease of being able to get to that manufacturing plant easily, which you'll need to do definitely. Like if you're going to build in China and you don't have a company like Dragon Innovation acting as your interface layer to that manufacturing process, then you, the founder, or both founders, or somebody who's in that core team is going to need to go basically live near the manufacturing plant for some number of months while you get your design into manufacturing.
Even if, I'd note that even if you do work with somebody like Dragon, you will be going to China.
That doesn't mean that you won't have to go there. We still, when we were getting our first and our second design into production, we would still have somebody there probably about half the time, which meant like, out of every month, 2 weeks of that month, somebody from Siftio was over there working with the Dragon person and the whole factory team. So you're going to always have to iterate on your design, and if you can iterate with somebody that's on your even in the same time zone or same language situation, it's going to go that much faster. And also, one last point, for things where the feel of your product is really important, like when I was talking to John, the Twine product was made out of this cast rubber. He described how they just needed to make sure it felt right. And as easy as it is to make phone calls and do Skype and talk to your manufacturing partner, some things you just have to go feel if they feel right, and you still can't do that yet. Maybe the haptics project is gonna solve that for us, but you can't quite do that yet remotely.
I wanted to build on that last point of why you need to go to China if you manufacture in China. And I'm the guy that spent 6 months in China out of the year getting the production lines up and running, getting the design complete, the rest of it. And the reason is because there's a huge knowledge transfer that has to happen from the designer to the manufacturer to get into production. And it's not just a matter of releasing the PCB or the mechanical drawings and such. I mean, that needs to happen. But there is a lot of touch and feel and just knowledge that you have about what you're doing because you've been working on it passionately for a year that they don't have because they've never seen this product before. And certainly the assembly line worker who shows up to work, and is told, "Hi, today's your first day at work, now go make this," right? And is given a one page of instructions on what to do. They have to be able to figure out how to make it. And so all sorts of really silly things from your point of view, speaking as the expert in this product, happen that are not at all apparent to the person who may be expert in manufacturing but has no knowledge of what you're doing. And there are things like feel. How should the button feel when you push on it? Is there a right answer to that question? If you care about the design and interface of your product, yes. But if you're told to mount this button here, well, I mounted it. No one knows what it's supposed to feel like. how the packaging, the interior packaging of the product should be. Does there need to be a cover on a lens? How are things oriented? All these look and feel questions are incredibly hard to convey through documentation and telephone calls. And you end up going there to fix it yourself and explain to them, this is what I want my product to be like. And it's that knowledge transfer that you can't get away from. And if you're doing all that knowledge transfer, if you go to spend 6 months in China because you're going to have them make 1 million units a year for the next 3 years, that's a good deal. But if you're doing that so they can have a 1-week production run for your 5,000 units, that's not such a good deal. And that's why, going back to what we're all saying, if you can manufacture domestically, I think that solves that problem.
There's definitely just like common sense, like isn't kind of the same in China. Like things that pretty much everyone in this room would see the same way, a manufacturer in China wouldn't necessarily see the same way just because they come from a different background and have a different sensibility. So there's like a whole nother layer that you need to convey about your product that you would just assume that people in this room would kind of understand, which is difficult. Although I will say that I think there's kind of a sensibility to say that, maybe Chinese manufacturing is worse or something like that. It's not worse, it's way better. They live and breathe manufacturing there. Like, you go to a bookstore in Shenzhen, like a Borders-esque kind of bookstore, there will be an entire section on the wall dedicated to injection mold design. Like, you couldn't find one book at a Borders here about injection mold design. Like, they live and breathe this. This is all they do. They're very, very good at their jobs.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that because it's a thing I run into all the time in conversations like this. It's, they're no good over there, they lie, they cheat, they're going to steal my design, et cetera, et cetera. In general, those guys over there are the best in the world at what they do, right? And it is, it's amazing what they can do for your product if you work with them, if you build a relationship, if you share with them and trust them as you want them to share with you and trust you. So when I say don't go to China, it's not because they're not great at what they do, it's because most young companies aren't really ready to take advantage of what they offer.